Listen, Talk, Repeat podcast. I'm Wendy Capewell, your relationship specialist, and this podcast is all about things relating and affecting relationships. I'll be interviewing guests who are experts in their profession, learning more about what they do and how they help others. In some episodes, I'll be sharing some insights and tips of my own. So settle back and enjoy. Hello, and today I'd like to introduce Emma Stroud. She is an explorer of business, comedy, creativity and speaking. Emma, can I ask you to introduce yourself to the listeners, please?
Hello. Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Today I do feel like an explorer. I've been lucky enough to be playing in the business world for 15 odd years. I've had different businesses, all with the idea of helping people communicate and deliver the best version of themselves. And while doing that, I've also carried on my professional comedy. So I'm a comedy improviser. I've done my own one-woman show. I'm just writing my new stand-up. And I work with lots of speakers across the world, and I get to speak across the world myself. And then I also get to MC lots of events as well. So I do feel like I'm in a beautiful place of exploration and helping other people find what their truth is, what gets them going. And it's been quite a journey, and I really feel very blessed that I've managed to put my business head and my creative head into the same place. And I have this lovely life now, which is splendid.
That sounds just delightful, and yeah, great fun as well. Sounds like you have a really fun life. And isn't that what all of us would aspire to, really?
Well, I think so. And I think sometimes we, when I go into especially larger organizations and I meet people that are working for bigger businesses, and I think there's a real shame that I think at the heart of all of us is a wanting and a desire to be happy and to spread fun and to have joy, and yet we all get more and more adult and become more and more serious because life puts pressures on us, relationships happen, families happen, and actually those people that I see really living a successful life, however you perceive that, really remember that actually at the heart of everything that we should be doing should make us smile, because then we're more successful in every way anyway. Got the endorphins, got all of that good stuff. So yeah, I when I walk into places and you can see that they haven't given themselves permission to laugh, that makes me quite sad, because children laugh all the time, and then gradually as we become more and more adult we laugh less, and actually the more we laugh the more we can achieve in however achievement looks for any different person.
Yeah, I agree. And I think so many people, they take themselves too seriously and they do forget to allow their inner child out. And allowing that to happen is just such fun, isn't it? And it makes us feel good. I don't think there's anything nicer to release tension than a good old belly laugh. When you feel that really having fun, enjoyment, it releases so many tensions and allows all those good hormones to function and overcome the stress ones. Yeah,
definitely. And it has to be that balance. I'm as much as the fun and the joy is so important, because if you're not experiencing that, and for listeners, if you imagine my hand has gone up above my head, you can't actually experience the full range of emotion. So how could you possibly expect yourself to really shift, change and grow in whatever personal journey you're on, whatever development? And I think there's a lot of people that live in a very safe plateau of sort of more existing, and actually in order to really experience the highs you do have to feel the lows, but by doing that surely that is more fulfilling than just staying very safe. And for me, everything which is probably why I use the word explorer today, it's about not being safe. It's about being brave and challenging yourself and getting other people far wiser than yourself to ask you questions so that you can help grow in whatever way that means for you.
Yeah. I think that, yes, so some people just want to stay on that plateau because it is a safe place. I can't, having to control our emotions, and maybe not be ourselves, be what we think others want us to be.
Yeah, and I mean that's been something that I really struggled with. I think if I was doing this sort of 5 years ago, not even 5 years ago, probably even 3 years ago, there would have been a lot of, I don't think I'd be brave enough to have said the word explorer. I don't think I would have mentioned comedy quite so soon, because I really got caught in my own trap of, well, society wants me to be very grown up and I need to be successful at business. And in order to be successful, I've got to make sure that I grow my business and I employ lots of people, which I did. And actually that wasn't my truth. That wasn't right for me. And it has been a journey of exploration, challenges, both ups and downs, to get to this place where it's like, actually, no, that doesn't have to be my path. But it was, and it's about letting go of what sort of society and the pressures of others. I remember I talked about this I recently did my TEDx talk, and I spoke about this. There was one of those moments, you know, you have those moments in your life. And I was invited to this inspirational women's event in the city. And because it was the city, I was like, well, I better wear a suit. Now, I don't wear suits. I don't own a suit. And I went off and bought a suit. And then I thought, well, I better get a handbag. Now, for those of you that don't have a visual picture of me, I'm a short pixie woman who the idea of smart is I bung on a tie and wear very cool trainers. But for this event, I thought, well, they want me to wear a suit and I should take a handbag. And I walked in at this event, and it was in that in the Lloyd's building, that very famous building in the city. And I disappeared at that event. I even flattened my quiff. I always have a quiff. And I disappeared. And I walked out, and not in the middle of the event, I hasten to add, I walked out at the end. Yeah. And I went downstairs, and I promised myself I was never going to do that again. Because I had put on this skin that I thought they needed from me. The reason they'd invited me was because I do comedy and I host events and I work with cool people. And the following year, fortunately, I did enough to be invited back. And I went as me, and I went wearing a tie and I think a waistcoat. My quiff was particularly big on that day. And that was how I ended up meeting people that have now become my friends.
Yes. So you were trying to, as you say, conform to what you thought others wanted.
Yeah.
And that is something about the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And why is that so important, do you think?
I think stories have a strength, you know. And when I ask the question, you know, what do stories mean to you? Predominantly adults go, well, children, because that's obviously the first time that we really hear stories is when we're growing up. But as we do start to form our own identity and work out who we are and what drives us, unfortunately, what I've witnessed and what I've seen both for myself and with people that I've worked with is that we hear stories about beliefs, or we hear stories about what's possible, or we hear stories about what's not possible. And those stories, because they are in essence, almost like in our DNA, we can start to really believe that those stories are the truth. You know, it's, for example, a very dear friend of mine, you know, she was telling herself this story of, well, no, I can't sing, right? And singing is always is a common thing that lots of people go, I can't sing. And I'm like, who told you can't sing? Oh, well, no, I was told I couldn't sing by X, generally by a teacher or by a parent. And then as they become more and more adult, and I use singing because it's quite a common example. And I'm like, but of course you can sing. And these stories that we sometimes hear at formative points in our childhood and our adolescence and sometimes adulthood can really stay with us, because we end up, and they're not actually our own voices. They're somebody else's voice, you know, and it can be somebody like a boss going, oh, but you're no good at writing, so you'll never go for this promotion. 10 years later, you're then offered something else, and that is the story. You go, oh, but I'm no good at writing. I should never go for that promotion. And actually, it's not a story of truth. And for me, it's about questioning what are actually your stories and what are actually your truths and what other people have told you that you've then taken as your own.
And I can identify with that so much. I think there's lots of examples I could give, but the one that sticks out in my mind at the moment is I was always told at school I couldn't draw, I couldn't paint, I was useless at art. And I carried that with me forever until 10 years ago. I just decided, well, I'm going to go to an art class and just see whether or not someone could teach me. And it's been a hobby of mine ever since. And yeah, quite a few go in the bin. It doesn't matter. But it means that I enjoy it. It's something I enjoy, something I can explore. I try different mediums. It's might be kind of watercolors, pastels, or anything. But it just that being able to just relax into it, to explore my potential. No, I'm never going to be Picasso. It's never going to happen. But it is that, the fact that I'd believed that story and I carried it around with me for so long. And it gets in the way, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think, it's the same as, like when you go back at the age, and I've got a 5-year-old son now, there's nothing in his stories, in his mind, that tells him that he can't do anything. There's nothing in his makeup which makes him go, I'm not, I can't. He just explores and he tries stuff. And there are going to be things that he's naturally warms towards more. But at the moment, hopefully, if I'm doing a good enough parenting job, at the moment, anything is possible. And for me, at a certain point, we start to believe what other people tell us, or we get put into these different boxes. And I think we lose the joy of exploring and the joy of creativity. And for me, one of the key things is, as adults, especially adults, who are being very adult in whatever way that means to you, we all become very fixated on outcome. And actually, one of the things, as you're saying with your painting, is like the outcome in with all respect is almost irrelevant. It's not about the outcome. It's actually about the joy of the process. And from my theatre world and from my devising world and from my improvising world, the process is as important, if not more important, than any outcome. But you have to just give yourself that permission to try. And again, with that fixed stories, lots of people get very scared unless something very dramatic happens in their life, a death or a birth, that normally triggers people to question their stories. They can just get stuck, well, no, I don't do that because I'm an introvert. No, I don't do that because I'm an extrovert. Or I don't do that because I'm no good at X, Y, and Z. And as your example beautifully demonstrates, it's like, well, actually, let me go and find out what is my truth. And actually, let me write my own stories as opposed to having lots of other stories written for me.
And I think that's been something that I've enjoyed so much over my life, is questioning those stories. I again, growing up, I believed I wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough daughter. I wasn't good enough pupil. I wasn't good enough at the subjects. I wasn't good enough wife. I wasn't a good enough mother. I wasn't good enough at my career. And then when it came to that journey of self-development, and I thought, I wore it as a like it always tattooed on my forehead to start with. It's like, that's where my problem is. And then I just stopped and said, this is stopping me. Why am I labeling myself with this story? And once I started challenging that, I thought, you know what? I am good enough. It doesn't mean that I don't want to challenge myself to explore, like you said, more things and see whether or not I want to move out my comfort zone. But I wasn't being stuck in that you can't do it because you're not good enough.
And that by its very nature takes bravery and courage. And I think in order to shift the stories that we have, because the stories underneath the words of the stories are generally core beliefs. And I think in order to shift those, it takes a bravery and a willingness to look at oneself. And I think one of the things that we struggle with in the UK in particular is that we generally only go and seek help when we're in crisis. And for me, if you're in crisis, that's not the time that you're going to be able to address your stories, because you're in crisis. So something's going on. You're in a relationship plateau. You're in a breakup state. You know, you've been widowed. You know, whatever your crisis might be. That's not the time for really looking at that belief that, you know, you've just used there in terms of I'm not good enough, because you haven't got the capacity, because you need to deal with the crisis. But unfortunately, and I do believe it is starting to change, and over my career I've seen it is starting to change, that there is more openness for people to seek out coaching and to seek out counselling and different therapeutics and retreats and, you know, more spiritual kind of paths. But actually, in order to really address the stories, when the best time to do it is when you're in a really good place. Yeah. Because if you're in a really good place, you've got the resources to then look at the stories and to be challenged without it being, everything's all up in the air. Sometimes sounds better than words. So rather than, you can be like, I can now look at that, you know, and that's a far stronger, and it's far more likelihood of success that the beliefs and the stories will then change.
Yeah. Yes, and that's my experience in working with people, that they come in crisis and they're, as you say, they just haven't got the space, the capacity. They're just not, they're dealing with a crisis, and therefore they just haven't got that room to deal with themselves or what they really want. Yeah, exactly. How do you think those stories that we tell ourselves, how do you think they affect our connections, our relationships?
I think those relationships that we want to have at deeper levels, in order to have those deeper levels and that real true human connection, and I'm sure everyone that's listening to this can all take a moment and think about that person or people, if they're lucky enough, that just get them, that really listen, that hold them, and probably vice versa. There's an openness and there's a willingness. And there's a reason why you've got that person, because somehow the stories that you've perhaps been telling yourself that aren't so positive, you've probably shared. And so you've probably allowed that openness. And for me, in order to deepen relationships and to really connect with people, there has to be, again, it's this word, there has to be that bravery of going, this has been my truth, but I'm questioning it now. This has been where I've come from, and this is what I've been telling myself. But actually, I don't know if I believe it. And it's okay to go, I don't know. But it's about giving yourself that permission and that space to really talk about your stories, to talk about where it is that you come from, how you've ended up with your identity, with your set of beliefs. And loads of people that I talk to, they quite often sort of go, but no one will be really interested in my story yet. And I'm like, but your story's amazing. Because every single human being, and this doesn't matter whether you are a stay-at-home mum, somebody that literally lives on a retreat and doesn't see people, or a CEO of a business, it doesn't matter what you do at all. It's about how you connect first and foremost with yourself, and then having that courage to then go, this is where I'm at, and to share it, you know. And I think, you know, if you look at all of the current stuff in the media with the Me Too stuff from all of the women sharing experiences, by sharing it, it's taking away the power, and it's taking away that blame, and it's taking away the shame, and, you know, shame and trauma can stay with us for a long time. So for me, it's in order to really shift your stories and to, in essence, write your own chapters, I guess you have to be brave and tell what it is, where you've come from, not hide it.
And I think that is where people struggle, because it's showing their vulnerability.
Yeah.
And once we're vulnerable and allow that person, whoever it is, in or be able to speak our truth, that leaves us open to ridicule, shame, disbelief, and many other emotions. So it does take that bravery to be able to say that, and you're a brilliant example, Me Too. Because, and it's opening up to judgment as well.
Because it's interesting, because all of those things is one side of the coin, isn't it? It goes back to the feeling the lows to feel the highs. But also, if you don't share, if you're not brave, if you don't go into that vulnerable state, what you can't also get is you can't get the shared experience, you can't get the love, you can't get the sense of community, you can't get the inspiration or being inspired. You can't get any of that if you just hold on to them with that toxicity, with that shame, with that trauma, with that, because we've all got our skeletons, we've all had, you know. And I remember years and years ago, you know, my dad died when I was 10, and I remember one of my friends, and I think we were about 14, 15, and she said, Emma, but you know, I was like, are you all right? And she said, yeah, I mean, I'm fine. And she quite clearly wasn't. And she just went, but this seems really little in comparison to what you've gone through. And I was like, what? And she went, well, my cat just died. And she was really upset. And I was like, but we can't do a compare contrast. This is the worst thing that you've ever gone through. So please allow me to hold you in that space, because there'll be worse things or better. It's not about a scale of who's had the worst. What you've experienced or are experiencing. And if you're feeling something, whether really joyful and happy or really sad and traumatic, it's your truth. And I think, especially, I think all of us, whether women or men, I think we all kind of go, oh, well, I should be okay. You know, that dangerous should word. I should be over this relationship breakup. I should be over X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, I'm not. And it's okay, but you've got to carry on talking about it, and you've got to go, this is where I'm at, because it's that vulnerability which will then no doubt will empower the person you're speaking to be more vulnerable and to be more open. And so therefore you're far more likely to have that shared collective, oh, I feel better now, thanks.
Yeah. And what came to my mind is that recently I'm working with a couple, but I've seen him, I was talking to him on his own, and he was sharing the most horrendous things that happened when he was abused as a child. And he said afterwards, he said, for the first time, I don't feel judged. So he had felt that by sharing that, and without and me not judging him, I wasn't allowing that space, allowing him to be able to speak his truth. And it's lost its power because continuing to work with him, he said, I don't feel he's got any power over me anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, what a gift that man gave himself by giving himself permission to come and work with you.
Yeah.
So that he probably didn't come with the intention of ever telling you that story, but no doubt something as traumatic as abuse has without doubt will have influenced how he behaves in his relationship, etc. And again, the stories that he tells himself, am I enough? Am I damaged? Am I whatever those phrases might have been? And actually, by being not judged, the main thing, which feels like what he experienced, was not only the space that you created for him, but also it meant that he could turn off his own judgment. Because I think when people are dealing with abuse or trauma or grief, I think we are very quick to create our own stories of the I should and to take it in. And actually, it's the most damaging thing we can do. That's why groups are really important. It's why, you know, going and seeing people like yourself, or, you know, and I think when sometimes just talking with your mates, you know, it's taking away that judgment, that shame, that toxic. Again, I go back to sound effects. You know, if in doubt, go back to sound effects. It's that get rid of that and make it like that.
I think there's something in that, because those being able to express it's actually moving it in your body. Yeah. You know, when you could go, it actually releases something. And the same way with the because it's a whole holistic feeling, isn't it? You know, you've voiced it, you felt it, expressed it. It's the whole thing. It's a big release, whichever way it is.
Which, from a voice perspective, is always fascinating. I was doing this conference a couple of weeks ago, and I had quite a few, sort of about 80 odd people staring at a wall. That sounds really odd. It wasn't, you know, they were about a metre away from it, and I just gave them all permission just to play with their voice, because as human beings, you know, as I'm sure we can all remember, you know, when we're kids, we kind of go and do all these different things with our voices. And most people only use sort of 4 notes of their 28 note range, unless suddenly you're very angry, and it might just be like, why have you done that? So where's that voice come from? And actually what's really important is actually giving yourself permission to hear your voice with what it can all do, not necessarily in a singing way, but just what can it do, because that by its very nature means that energetically stuff is shifting, because you have to do it from your stomach, which then helps with that whole release. And again, it's just this permission to kind of be in the world. And when you're really in the world, it's really hard to stay small. And it's really hard to carry on believing those stories of I'm not enough. You know, I remember an amazing teacher of mine. She said, if you're feeling really miserable and you're hearing the same stories and, you know, I'm not enough and everything's not going very well, go outside and look at the sky and open your body so you are just standing open and look at the sky. Because it is impossible after a period of time to stay in that I'm really small, I'm not enough, whatever words, whatever stories you're telling yourself. And then she was like, on the counter, if you do need to spend a bit of time there, which sometimes we do, go and make yourself really small and go into that kind of fetal position, curl up and be somewhere really small, because then you will stay in that space, and you will. So, but we have a choice, you know. And for those that might even be in that place of, you know, struggling with depression, one of the key things is just sometimes just go outside, just feel, you know, and you might be able to be picking this up. You know, it's a very windy day today as we're doing this podcast, and just sometimes just by going out and feeling the wind and remembering, and with no phones, no anything else, that can help shift that energy, that into or whatever noises you feel is appropriate for yourself.
That's great. That's great advice. And what's coming up for me is the fact that we fill our lives with stuff. We just fill our lives with doing stuff, whether it's on a phone, whether it's on a computer, whether it's filling, or, you know, going to the gym, whatever it is, we have to fill every single piece of our lives with stuff, because then we don't get in touch with ourselves. We don't explore the stories that we've been told, because we're filling our lives up. We're not giving it space.
And I think space has become a bit of a key word for me in my own journey. And I was very guilty of always being very busy, very successful, very busy. I've got to run here, run there, do that, do this, and busy and busy and busy and busy. And over the last couple of years, what I've really gone back to is actually the more space that I have, the more the right things appear. And it's really hard, because there's part of my slight workaholism and my slight perfectionism that I have within myself, because everything that I do, I really enjoy. So sometimes being in a rehearsal space doesn't feel like work, but I have to remember it is work. And it's just about giving yourself permission to have space. But the only way that I know how to make this happen, which might sound very odd in a sort of way, is you have to diarize it. So I came up with this, feels appropriate to share, I came up with this system about 2-3 years ago called my Rainbow Diary, which I know is slightly ironic coming from a gay woman, but we'll let that go. And so I worked out there were 7 really important things for me to do on a week-by-week basis, which helps me. And, you know, so one of them was doing my truth works, which is my business. One's doing comedy. It's no particular order. One's time with my son. One's time with my partner. One's friends and family. One's exercise, and one's self-care. Now, the self-care could be, and that's orange in my diary, could be, and I will write, go home, watch box set. And I'm like, oh, cool, I'm going to go home and watch a box set because I've put it in. So on a Sunday night, I will look at my diary, and if I don't see the 7 colours, I know that something's missing. Now, I'm a realist, and I'm very lucky because I get to travel around the world doing what I love. Sometimes there won't always be red, which is time with my friends and family. But then I will make sure the following week there is red. And the orange, which is my self-care, and the green, which is exercise, there always has to be. Because the busier we become, and especially as parents and just busy, successful people listening to this, that time can drop. And how can we possibly expect the stories that we're telling ourselves to shift if we're not giving ourselves any space. So that also can include meditation. It can include me working with my coaches. I've got 2 at the moment. Whatever it is that's going to help Emma shift, change and grow, I have to make sure I give time to. And sometimes that can literally be as simple. So just before doing this, I'd had a whole morning of phone calls and spoken to the States early this morning and everything like that. I was like, I need a bit of space. So I just went for a walk around the common, and I put it in my diary, and it put as orange. And if I hadn't have put that in my diary, there is no way I would have done it.
Yeah. It's too easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Too easy. I need to do that. And because it's not in the diary, it's put off. And I'll just finish this piece of work, or I'll just finish whatever it is. And then whatever that thing is, to give us that good life balance, it goes down the hole. And I'm just as guilty of it at times.
Yeah, and there will be
away with it.
Yeah, and your 7 things will be different. One would, the only rule of my rainbow diary whenever I share it is exercise and self-care have to be there. Exercise and self-care have to be there. Now, for some people, they might not be in a relationship. For others, they might not have kids. So at that point, it might be, seeing friends, whatever it is. And that always needs reviewing as well. What are the 7 things? Because otherwise, we're always living in, well, when I have more time. So when I'm less busy, when I've earned, when I've had, and actually the only thing we can control is the present. We can't control yesterday, and I can't control tomorrow. But I can control today.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that happens when couples come to see me is they say, I'm working towards my career. I'm trying to get the business off the ground, or waiting till the children get older. And then in those situations, I will look at the relationship. We'll spend time. We'll invest in it.
Yeah.
And that's no good, because by that time the other person has just got so hacked off. They've said, you're neglecting me, you're neglecting the relationship, I want out.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we've got busy lives, and if we're parents and we've got other commitments and we're trying to work and all those other things that are happening in our lives, it's hard to juggle, but where's the joy? Where's the fun? Why did you get together with your partner if you're not going to have fun together?
Exactly. And I think one of the things is because of how we all are now as human beings, we can all consume a lot and do a lot. It's just really important to go, right, here's the next 3 months of my life. Right, I'm going to have that weekend where we're going to go away, and that weekend, if we're in a couple, or this weekend, I'm going to organise a bunch of friends to come together. And even if you're not, again, the stories that we tell, even if you don't believe that you're a natural organiser and you've got one really close friend, just put something in once every 6 weeks. And when you finish it, then put the next one in. So that you have this joy, and these can be little steps. These don't have to be, if taking half an hour for yourself seems like the biggest thing to do, then just do it, but don't feel guilty, and own it. I always I love the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and one of the things, which is this amazing book, and I'd really recommend anybody to have a go at it. It's a 12-week thing about creativity, but there's 2 rules within that, and one of them is to take yourself on an artist state each week. And that could be, as I say, half an hour, could just be going for a walk around the park. It doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be expensive, but just where you check in on, where am I at? What am I doing? What am I telling myself? Where do I want to be? Or you go to an art gallery, get inspired, and remember that there's a whole big world out there. Because otherwise we can suddenly go, oh, there we are. I'm turning 40 this year. I think I'm still 5, so it's slightly awkward. I appreciate I have a 5-year-old, so that would be unnerving, a bit weird. But, you suddenly have these age milestones and you go, oh, hang on, that's crept up on me. Although slight tangent, I did just get ID'd for booze, which made me very happy. I was like, are you IDing me? They went, yeah. So I'm now telling myself the story where I could still be 18.
But we do, we and that's the danger, isn't it? A pigeonholing yourself and saying, I can't possibly do that. I'm too old to do that. I couldn't possibly do that. And one of the things I did on the April the 1st last year, I was fortunate enough to be in New Zealand and in Queenstown. Lovely. And I did a bungee jump.
Amazing.
And it was, and there were young kids coming up to me saying, have you just done that? Did you do a bungee jump? I'm too scared to do it. And I went, yeah. But it is that. And they said to me, you've got to come back because the oldest person who's ever done it so far is 94. I went, well, I've got a way to go yet. But it was just, but just as you say, telling those stories, I can't possibly do that. I'm too old, or I'm whatever the thing is. I'm too shy. I haven't got the ability. It's those stories you say that we tell ourselves. Now, before doing it, I had no intention of doing that, but no way. But as I got closer and closer to getting to Queenstown, and friends along the way said, who are quite adventurous, young couple, are you going to do that bungee jump? And I went, no, I couldn't do that. And then it was more of, well, perhaps I could. And so every day, every evening, I was on Wi-Fi, and I was thinking, well, I wonder what it'd be like. And as it got closer, it was almost, what if I can't do it? What if there isn't space to do it? And it was really fascinating how our stories can change. And there's something in me that I can't do that. No, I'll be too worried about it. Well, what if I can't? What if there is a reason that stops me from doing it then? Not me, but something external.
Yeah, and then suddenly you realise I really want to do it. Don't tell me I can't. I really want to.
Yeah. But I think that translates into so many things in our lives. Because you tell yourself, I can't possibly do that.
The amount of people that that come up to me. So I've got an improvised comedy show, and I've been doing improv comedy for years. And the amount of people that come up to me and go, I could never do that. And I'm like, what do you do? They're like, I'm an accountant. I'm like, I could never do that. And then they go, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, no, of course I could do that. I've just chosen not to. There'll be so many things that you do as an accountant that if you look back on yourself, on day one you had to really think about, but now you just do. Is that right? And they're like, well, yeah, of course. I'm like, so improvising and doing comedy is exactly the same thing. It's a skill that I have spent 20 odd years learning, developing, honing, so that it looks like I don't have to think about it. But of course, I've got 20 odd years experience. But I truly believe that anybody could do it. Again, it doesn't matter with what outcome. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to want to go and do TV or perform in London and do Edinburgh Festival. It doesn't mean that, but you definitely can. And the amount of people when I speak quite a lot about improvising in business, and the amount of people that when I first walk in, they've got their arms crossed. They see this small said pixie with a sort of punky little hair rock up, and they're like, oh dear, no, this isn't what we want. And I quite often, and there's no table, which instantly freaks people out because they're telling themselves, there's not a table, I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh gosh, you've taken away my comfort blanket, again. Thing. And suddenly, after a few hours, generally does take a good sort of half an hour to an hour, they suddenly remember, I can do this. Oh, look, I can play. I'm like, because generally I ask the question, were you children? And occasionally I get one or so idiot that goes, no, I never was. So I then end up calling them man-child for the rest of the time. And by the end, man-child is like, you were right. I was a child and I can do this. And again, it's that permission piece. It's that, just an openness to try, even if something goes wrong, because it doesn't matter. We get caught up about so many small things when there are really bad things happening in the world that actually, if people can get over losing limbs, of losing their loved ones, being challenged in every way, abuse, assault, whatever awful things that are going on, and we can find a resilience to tell a different story, to tell a different truth about that, then surely we can be brave enough to go and try different stuff and go and explore. And you might not like it. You might not have liked bungee jumping, but clearly you did. But at least then you could say, well, I tried it and I didn't like it, or I did. But otherwise, just a what if. And
Yeah.
do we want to get to a place when we're in our 80s, 90s, and now hundreds, because we're all going to live that old, looking back going, well, what if I had tried telling myself something else? What if I hadn't listened to what was my mother's voice, my father's voice, my siblings, my teacher's voice? What if? Because I know for a fact I don't want to be in a place where, as I get to that point in my life where I go, well, what if? I'd far rather fail many, many times, which I have done, and then grow from that and shift and change than just be stuck in a dialogue with myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's nothing worse than living with regrets, is there?
Nah.
No. And yeah, could have been that I hated every minute of it. Actually, I didn't. It was so exhilarating once I got over because I hate our heights. I am terrified of heights. And to stand at the edge of that bridge on this little platform and just a piece of rope about this thick, nobody can see it, but not very thick rope.
It's very thin rope.
Very thin rope. Yeah. And just think, that's all that's holding me, and all that stuff going through my head. What if the rope breaks? This is stupid. I can't jump. All of that, but at the same time, reassuring, the other voice in my head was saying, "But they've got good safety records. Yeah, this is going to be amazing." It was just that. And then when I just soaring through the air, that was the bit. And I met a girl afterwards who we'd both gone up together. She was in her 20s, and she was going. Whoa, we were both going through that, going up to the bridge. And afterwards, we just caught up with each other, and we were just, the exhilaration was amazing. We said, want to do it again now. It's one of those feelings. It's just incredible. So it can be anything, can't it? It can be any small thing. It can be talking to a stranger. It can be connecting with somebody. It can be opening up our vulnerability. It can be anything. Just taking that step out of our comfort zone can make all the difference. It can be saying to your partner, I'm feeling insecure in this relationship. I feel unhappy in this relationship. It can be anything, but just to be able to say your truth.
And especially that choice of language there is beautiful, because I feel isn't, because I think with the language that we use, it has so much power. And of course we all know that, but I think sometimes we forget it when we're feeling very emotive. And I think by using the language such as I feel, or I'm in a place, or I'm scared, or I'm really happy, because what you're doing then by sharing that in that manner is you're not imposing yourself on them. You've made me feel, you've made me angry. And again, one of my teachers once said was like, well, you're giving away all your power then, because you're saying you've made me. How can anybody actually make you feel angry? That's your decision.
Yeah.
If you're angry, but you have to own it. And I think that is for my own therapeutic journey, when I've worked with people, actually being able to say, this is how Emma feels, was a really big leap, because I think it's not definitely it wasn't how I was raised. And I think having that permission to go, I'm just going to own me, because that's all I can control, and those are the boundaries that I'm in charge of. And and it's the same when I'm working with speakers. Lots of people give all of their power to the audience. They're like, well, I want them to think X and I want them to think Y. And as I always say, well, unless you're someone like Darren Brown and you can genuinely get into their heads and hypnotize them, you have no control over that. You have no influence. All you can be is the best of you. And that's the same in all interactions. If you're being the best of you and you're being mindful of your own intent, your own reason why you're there, and you're mindful of your own language to use, as you so beautifully put, I feel, or, and I'm in this place, then actually that's all we can do to really help ourselves and then our audience, whoever our audience may be in whatever context that means,
Yeah. And it takes away, as you say, it takes away the accusation. It takes away that anger, hopefully. That not always, because somebody can bite, but as long as you're holding on to that, these are my feelings. You can't take my feelings away from me. This is my truth. Like, this is what you do. Truth works. And I think that comes back to that. I think, and I What is it, do you think, that stops women especially from speaking their truth?
I think I really want to be able to give a different answer to the answer I'm going to give, but I can't, because the answer that is the truth that I see is confidence.
Yeah.
And it's sort of becoming a little bit of one of my life missions, I think. In order for me to be the best me, I hope that then will have an impact, and so me demonstrating my confidence, my courage, my vulnerability, to go back to what we were just saying. And I think with women in particular, we still have all of those quotes, all sort of vetted of like, if a woman's going for a job, if they've got 80%, they still won't go for it, whereas a man will go for 20%. I think unfortunately are still true. And I have a male business partner, and he and I quite often talk about this and this difference. And our male clients generally come with this: I know this is what I want to work on, this is where I want to improve, and there's a real clarity. Whereas the majority, not all, but the majority of women underneath it is like, well, I think I could potentially be quite good. And some of these women are like CEOs and very successful in that success in terms of business career. And people at all levels and all walks of life. I was doing this room full of women, and we were playing with improvising, and they all came from across the spectrum in terms of what they did and their own identity. And without exception, after 15 minutes, I had to get the group to sit down and go, what is going on? And all of them, underneath it, just did not believe in themselves. And there were so many blocks in terms of, I can't, I'm not good enough, to go back to what you said, this is too far out of my zone, I don't think I've never been any good at any of this type of thing, I don't think I've got interesting stories, I haven't got a voice. And it all came down to confidence. And I realized that actually, and I quite often have people coming up to me after, if they see me speak, going, how have you become so confident? And I really struggle with this word, because confidence, to every single person listening to this, confidence will mean something else. So one of the ways that I like to help people and feel it's pertinent to share is to get a piece of paper and write the word confidence in the middle of it and draw a circle around it, and like a mind map, and then draw little lines going off it. And then write for you, what does confidence mean to you? So it could be tone of voice, it could be belief, it could be knowledge, it could be what I wear, it could be authority, it could be whatever it might be. Then go around those and then rate yourself at work and at home out of 10. So whatever it is, out of 10. So you might, tone of voice at work might be 4, but at home might be an 8. And then once you've done that, you then actually can really look, and as opposed to going, I want to become more confident, which is a huge thing for all women, but it's so nebulous that it's actually impossible to pinpoint what it is. You can then go, oh, right, so actually it's about my voice and it's about my body language, for example. But at home, my voice is an 8, and at home, my body language is a 7. So I do know how to do it. And then you can then start to address the specific bits that will then contribute to this big thing that is called confidence. So for me, with women, it's taking away the power of that word, which is unfortunately still the truth of what I see.
Yes, that's some great advice, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that later, because I think that is a brilliant exercise to do. And as you say, one word can mean a myriad of things to different people.
Yeah, yours is right, and mine is right. So again, this is why it has to be an individual thing. And when women in particular are seeking, well, I want to be more confident. How do I become more confident? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know you. I'm not in your head.
No, and I don't know what confidence means to you.
Exactly. So first and foremost, that's a new word. Foremost, you've got to know what it actually means to you, because otherwise you're just seeking this. What is it? No one knows until you've spent some time, which again goes back to the bravery and the courage of asking yourself the questions, doing these type of exercises, and then getting the support that you need and whatever bit it might be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Emma, it's been an absolute delight talking to you.
Oh, thanks.
It's really enjoyed it, as I love chatting to you anyway, because you have some wonderful ideas, and you're just so interesting to talk to. I love it. But thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
One of the things I want to ask you, because obviously you do help people with confidence, do you work with individuals? Do you work with corporates? I mean, what area specific, is there a specific area, or could anybody contact you?
Yeah, I mean, anybody can contact me. I quite often end up, when I do sort of my Facebook lives, end up with lots of different questions, which is a really good way to get in touch with me. So if you've got something like that, just befriend me. It's Emma Stroud, and my picture is I'm hiding behind a hanger. I don't know why, as in an actual hanger, not a plain hanger, which I sometimes have to describe, a hanger for clothes. And then, I sort of work with a few individuals on a, either 4 hours or 8 hour basis. And that's generally about something very specific. So it might be a talk, it might be an interview, but it's the 4 hours is always for something very specific. If you've got something where you're like, I want to feel X, but there's a real specific task in mind. And then I work with 12 individuals over a year, and this is for anybody who is successful and they want to go from being good to being great, or they want to go from great to being exceptional. And that's a full program where we take 6 people, myself and my business partner, take 6 people away for a 3-day residential. And by the end of that, everybody has a brand new 18-minute talk. And those 3 days are genuinely life-changing and a real privilege to be part of. And then each of those people then get 8 hours with me. So that's how I really work with people in terms of that. Organizations, some of them, they just contact me, directly and things like that. But I'm always sort of around on the wonders that is social media, and MC and speak quite a bit. And then if you want to come and see some comedy, I've got a residency in London for those people that are near London town, at the Museum of Comedy every last Thursday of the month. You can come and see my improv show called Bananas on the Run, because why not? And it's just a very fun and very silly thing, which links with my TEDx, which is all about be more banana, so have more fun, and joy in your life. So there is a thread. I do have some threads in my life. They're kind of odd, they're mine. So if you fancy some comedy, we always love having new people come to that. So every last Thursday at Museum of Comedy. But yeah, I'm around. That's kind of how people can get in touch with me.
Okay, brilliant. All of the contact details will be in the show notes, and more about you. Yeah, it's been great fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye. So you can find all the information about this show in the show notes. And you can find lots more on my website, www.yourrelationshipspecialist.co.uk, including the link to my podcasts. And you can also sign up on my newsletter, which has lots more tips and offers. So until next time, bye for now.